Begin.
Upon getting into their fighting position, the candidate will first fill out the administrative data at the top of the card to include squad, platoon, and company. Then, utilizing their lensatic compass, ensuring to keep it away from all metal surfaces to include the tripod and the weapon, the candidate will then determine the magnetic north of their fighting position. After utilizing the compass, they will then annotate in the top right corner of the card the magnetic north, utilizing the proper arrow. The candidate will then take their military-style map and protractor to determine the 8-digit grid position to their fighting position. Upon finding their 8-digit grid position, they will annotate that, as well as whether the fighting position is either primary, secondary, or supplementary. In the date block, they will put a date-time group to consist of 2 numbers for the date, 4 numbers for the time, 3 letters to designate the month, and then 2 numbers designating the year. In the weapon block, they will annotate the correct nomenclature for the weapon. In this case, it's an M240 Bravo. The candidate will then look out to their primary sector of fire to determine where the nearest major terrain feature is. If the terrain feature is 450 meters or less, each interval will equal 50 meters. If it is 451 meters or more, each interval will equal 100 meters. In this instance, it is 50 meters. The candidate will then sketch out their primary sector of fire utilizing solid lines with an arrow at the end of each line. In the instance the candidate decides to use a final protective line, or PDF, they will use a shielded blade to annotate their grazing fire. If there is dead space, they must break their shielded blade and annotate dead space properly on their final protective line. The candidate will then sketch out their secondary sector of fire using dashed lines. Any space in between the primary and secondary sector of fire must be annotated as dead space. In the instance of using a final protective line, the candidate must annotate the final protective line as number 1 with a circle around it. Every other target within the primary and secondary sector of fire will be ordered numerically in order of tactical significance. The candidate will then label each target with the correct number with a circle around it. Going back down to the data section of the card, the candidate will number all different targets numerically on the left-hand side of the column. Whether using a final protective line or a PDF, number 1 must be either of those. I say again, number 1 is always going to be your final protective line or your principal direction of fire. At this point then, utilizing the T&E, the candidate will then begin to get the direction, deflection, and elevation data for each target. For direction and deflection, this number must be within 54 mils of the true value. In the instance of getting the range for a target, 2 methods may be used: range estimation or utilizing the military map to plot out where the estimated location of the target is to get the estimated range. The range must be within 20% of the true value. The ammo column must be filled out with the proper ammo for the weapon system. In this case, it is 7.62 millimeter. In the description block, you must put an accurate description of what the target is. Finally, and most importantly, you must verify you use the proper medium machine gun symbol, which is an arrow with 2 hash marks. After fully completing your range card, You should check it from top to bottom before handing it to your grader.